Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And on this episode, we wanted to discuss rather than nothing but like 10th edition topics. Maybe, John, let's talk about something just a little general, a little wider hobby impulse, I'll call it. Because I have been hobbying hard, and I've been feeling a thing that rears its head fairly often in my hobby career. And it does it often enough that I suspect it might pop up in other people's hobby careers.
I've also been hobbying more lately, and I feel the topic itching in my brain.
Yeah, and that is the urge to cut corners in the hobby. This is something that I suspect a lot of people feel, but I don't think everyone probably feels it in the same way or the same degree. But I think the underlying cause is there for everyone.
Yes.
And it can sometimes, I could see it being very much a struggle for folks depending on your mindset. So we thought it might be worth kind of taking and breaking that down of what we've been feeling, why we might feel that way, and whether maybe you should, if you were feeling it, give into it or not.
What do about this problem, if it's a problem?
I don't know. It's hard. It's a lot of nuance. I can't fit it into a YouTube short. Why do my opinions on things have to be nuanced and long?
Well, we can discuss that at a different time.
John, I just want to sit in the driver's seat of my truck and yell for 30 seconds. That's absolute celestial truth, John.
Brr. Discipline.
First,
all right, let's go to hobby progress.
How many times games played? So, John, I know a lot of this answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What you been up to?
A lot. So, this week I have started off with the printed a bunch of stuff. We got training day coming up. We're going to be teaching some new people Warhammer in a healthy, safe, fun environment that is very nice for people who are newer. And we're going to teach them. I needed to do that. I need to print some models for them to use because getting a bunch of models to start with is hard. So we'll been printing that. I am printing up Emperor's Children for my roommate, and I am printing up more Guard for myself because that's the faction I seem to have dedicated myself to for the beginning of 10th edition. Because Genes their cults are too good, and I feel weird playing them against my friends because they seem like a lot of gotchas that unless someone is ready and knows what they are, it isn't much of a game. So did a bunch of that printing, and now I'm on to painting. I built the Corvus Cabal. I painted up one of them in a test scheme to prepare for the rest of them. I'm putting a little bit more effort into them because there's only 8 dudes.
So you could spend a little time doing some glitz and glamour on each.
And they're just cool. They're super fun models.
Those models are incredible.
They're very enjoyable.
Don't get me wrong, the big bird-winged dude coming down from on high with its murder stilts and stuff, that's cool. But I think just the regular stalkers also look really cool.
The normal dudes are cool. It actually kind of makes me want to play Warcry, which
I think Warcry is incredible. I cannot tell you how good Warcry feels to play. It's really nice.
And then I painted the Rogel Dorn. I painted a Lehman Russ. I built a Chimera. I painted another Chimera, and I painted a Basilisk. So I painted 4 tanks, did some test scheme, built a bunch of stuff. Whole bunch of stuff.
Not bad.
Yep. Gonna keep working on that. Baldur's Gate 3 came out, so it's struggling. It's making me struggle a little bit. But got a lot done. Gonna keep getting more done. Gonna be very exciting. And then I also, in this time frame since we last recorded, was able to teach someone a training game. They couldn't come to training day, so I taught them earlier, and that was great. And I got to see the Sisters of Battle in a direct like confrontation. They have some neat stuff. Their tanks are really good. Just generally fun, very exciting. It's very rewarding to bring new people into the game and kind of show that like not all of it's like it is on YouTube, not all of it's like it is at a game store. Like you can just play fun games with your friends in a much more casual way, and it not be like super high pressure, especially for earlier players who are newer or like returning after not playing for a long time.
It almost would run people away from the hobby, I would imagine.
Yeah. And like for me, priority number one is having more people to play against, and having like fun, like different, because I play different games for different reasons. So like for some people, I just want to play the game. For some people, it's a hangout. And then for sometimes it's like we're actually testing which one of us is better at this thing. And it's nice to have a wide roster of people to play with in order to do that. So I've been really trying to put my money where my mouth is and foster that in my local group. As we've talked about on the show a lot, and I feel wrong if we don't try to do it ourselves.
Yeah, and I also think, there's, of course, in my heart of hearts, like, a responsibility to bring people in because we can, and we're good at it. But also, it just, it feels good to watch people who are like, hey, I want to have, a hobby that's more physical, and to, hang out with people rather than just play video game. And, it is great to be able to take them from a place where they might be sort of in a rut or, struggling to throw them a little lifeline with, a hobby thing. I think that feels great. For them and us. Everyone
wins.
Everyone can win.
Yeah. Big win for all around.
What if everyone just gets to feel good? How great.
And what a novel concept. What about you? What have you done this week? Madman.
Well, other than Baldur's Gate 3.
We started a campaign with us together in it with two of our other friends, and 4-person Baldur's Gate's fucking nuts.
God, it's absolute insanity. I'm having a laugh.
We're unhinged because we're all moving at the same time. It's just
turn order. Ain't ever heard of it. Let's go. 3 conversations are playing out at once. All of the alignments are different.
The barbarian jumped in a hole. He started a fist fight.
It's so good. Other than playing Baldur's Gate 3, though, I've had a very productive hobby week. So over the past 2 weeks, let's see, I have to sort of try to break it down. I made 4 plates worth of STL files for my wife, because she wants to play Night Lords. She's one of the people playing at our Learner Day, and she is on the 3rd book of the Night Lords Omnibus, and is so deep into it that she is crying at some of these pieces, and has sent me a custom meme that she made for the novels, which, John, you really should tweet at Aaron Dibsky Bowden for fun. I hope he gets a chuckle out of it. And she's really into them, so she wants to play the Night Lords, but I don't want her to just get Chaos minis and then paint them Night Lords colors, because let's be honest, it's kind of lame. It's not the same.
They're also more themed for Black Legion than Night Lords, which are a different vibe.
Very different. So I had to spend a lot of time custom 3D kit bashing minis for her to try to get minis that have the same flavor and tell the story across the whole Legion. And I've kit bashed many plates worth of them. I've just got 1 to go. And then have been printing those so that she can work on painting them before the Learner Day. That took up quite a bit of time. Also, though, I have been working on Orcs, because we're going to have a get-together, Joe Hammer COD in September for Labor Day, where we're going to have a weekend get-together to play games.
Hell yeah.
And both Eldar and Custodes feel a little good for some of my matchups. So I'm instead going to take Orcs, which have, less oomph, and I don't have to feel bad about playing them. So I'm going to chuck them at the table, and I'm trying to, as a soft goal for myself, not anything sort of super hard, I want to try to have my list painted before then, if I can. And if I fall short, at least I'll have most of it painted.
And plus, orcs play a very, very honest game of Warhammer. They absolutely can rip and tear. They're not weak by any comparison, but they are.
You know what's coming.
You know it's there. Like
I'm going
turn
to,
one. You're like, I know what's happening.
I'm running up you. I'm going to run up to you. If you're a giant monster, I'm literally running up you, and then I'm gonna punch you in the mouth. Like that. That's the game plan. Okay, and no sideways swivels, no gotcha stratagems. That's exactly what's gonna happen. And whether or not I get there untouched is what determines if I win. But I want to try to paint that list. So I got 20 goblins put together, as well as 10 orc boys. I got them all primed. And then on their skin tones, I got them all 30 of those through a 4-color workup. With 3 different grains, and then like a flesh tone accent color for like mouths and lips and like elbows and knuckles and stuff. And scars, just to give them a little bit of variation on the skin. And then 10 of those goblins I got fully painted all the way through the process and washes and the whole kit kat caboodle done. And a unit of 10 orc boys I've got like 70 or 80% of the way, all the way through that process. So that's almost 2 units fully painted for that army.
You're spending so much time doing a 3-color workup on orcs.
4-color workup.
Orcs. 4-color workup on orcs. Jesus.
Yes. 4 colors for the flesh. But the way I think about it, like I'm going very easy on a lot of the like the other stuff they're wearing, like the boots, the pants, shirts, the weapons. Like I'm doing a little to nothing to those other than a base coat, some weathering, and a wash. Well, I'm literally doing nothing to those. Maybe some, like, Blood for the Blood God at the end. So, like, most of the visual variation is going to be in the skin, because that's where the eyes are going to go.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's my thought. So I can, like, do a little bit work on the front end on the skin, and then cheat on the back end, which is a whole thing. And also, my hobby room in here that I record in and paint in, I actually did some work on that. For those of us who've been for those of you who have been watching for a while, almost 2 years, like a year and a half ago, my wife and I, we moved into our first house, and I have a room dedicated to hobby, which is cool. But we moved into here, obviously it being our first house, we had very little furniture compared to what a house takes to furnish, rather than just our apartment. So we have been trying to like rotate it through all the rooms to buy stuff that's needed, and like we sort of take it one room at a time as the budget allows. And the hobby room is not high on the priority list for obvious reasons. Like the living room, the kitchen, bedroom's not done, but it's got some stuff. The hobby room though has been functional, but it's been a little bland, been a little boring. It's like little to nothing on the walls. But we've had a bunch of art prepped, and we just needed to get frames, and I needed shelves. So this past week, we took a night, and after buying some shelving units, put up some honeycomb shelves on the wall, and also some like floating shelves for hobby supplies and in-progress stuff. And then hung a lot of art, and there's still more to finish hanging on all the walls. And got a big cat tower for my lovely, lovely cats.
Precious.
So,
one's a crackhead, the other one has a single eye.
One's a little prince, the other's a gremlin. It's delightful.
What do you know? That dynamic exists in multiple places in your life.
Who knew? Yeah, so it feels good. Just being in a room with a bunch more art has a different vibe to it and makes it more fun to be in here and hobbying. Like, I don't know, I guess environment matters or whatever. But that has been nice, and I'm going to count it as hobby progress, because it did take a whole night of being in this hobby room with help, because I did not do that shit alone. I have all this art, I'm like, oh yeah, I want it to go on the walls, but then my brain's like, all right, great, where do you want it? And then it acts like it's never heard of like aesthetics or design in its life.
That makes sense.
It's like if you ask me, what do I want to eat for the week? Like, I forget I've ever had food. Food's gone. But, I don't know. Most of my hobby time, though, has been the orcs, if I'm being honest. And because there's so many of them, the urge to cut some corners was
Be pretty high.
strong. Whoo, buddy. And I think maybe we should talk about that. Yeah, everybody. It turns out when you're painting a batch of like 30 guys, you start to feel the urge to maybe not want to paint absolutely everything. And when that happens, it's kind of at least for me, it feels a little alarming.
Yeah.
It's outside of the realm of what you're used to.
I mean, I play Gene Stealer Cult, I play Imperial Guard, and I play Skaven. So I feel the urge of cutting corners pretty much every time I sit down to paint because there's, 20 to 60 rats in a unit for Skaven, and for Guard, there's like 20 dudes to a unit, but you have like 12 units of dudes. You have like 120 models of just infantry, not including tanks. And then Gene Stealer Cult is only infantry. It's even more horde. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about that here in a little bit when we talk about like what drives it. But like, it rears its head, and for me, I feel it fairly strongly.
Yes.
And like in this instance, I felt it while painting orcs, but I think also this could rear its head in other places. I think it could rear its head while you're building, for sure, in terms of like trying to scrape mold lines and stuff and like fill gaps and whatnot, and whether you want to or not. I think you could certainly feel this while painting, obviously. I also think you could feel this while kit bashing. And whether you want to do this or not, you could probably feel this when like trying to think of a narrative for your list on whether or not you really want to put a lot of time into that. I think you could feel this in list building. Like,
yeah, that was going to be what I called out. Was like, this is definitely something not talked about a lot, but like building lists, even in a casual setting, really matters, and you can cut a lot of corners there that might not feel great, but sometimes you need to, and it's a delicate process.
Yeah. So I think, like, just to put it vaguely, I would describe the idea of cutting corners if you're new to it. Like, let's just define it as sort of like taking a shortcut in any realm of the hobby rather than doing absolutely every possible step. Like,
yes.
And like y'all out there in Viewerland, just take that and apply it wherever. So like, for my example, I'm painting goblins, right? And like I've spent all of this time on the skin and stuff, and now I'm doing the base coats for like boots. I start with the boots and then move on to like pants and then like the leather straps that they have, and then moving into vests and stuff. And by the time I got done, I had used like 8 colors for all of these different base coats, or like 6 to 8 colors, something like that. And it took quite a bit of time, obviously, because they're goblins, and there's a number of them. And then I also have to do it on 20 more models. And then I look at their belts and like their straps and bandoliers, and there's buckles all over the place. Tiny goblin buckles. And not just like, oh, there's one buckle at the waist, like a belt buckle. No. Buckles all over.
Like a Final Fantasy character, but,
yes.
Goblin.
Rivets. God, so many rivets all over where these like fasteners are. That I had to ask myself, do I want to paint the buckles? Do I want to paint the rivets? And for me, the answer is no. God, no.
Don't blame you.
No, I do not want to paint the buckles and the rivets on every one of these freaking goblins. There's so many. And I'd have to do it on all 10 of them, and there's a ton of it. And then I'm going to have to do it on another unit of these same damn goblins. And then I'm going to have to do it on a 10-man unit of orc boys. And it's a lot for me. Mm-hmm. It's a lot.
Yeah. Especially when you're painting an army as opposed to painting a model.
Yes.
Like, I think that's the big thing to keep in frame here, is that you're painting 40 Gretchen and then like another 60 boys or whatever. Like, you are not going to want to paint all of those to shelf standard. I'm going to look at this and be happy about how well I did, right? Like, I'm not saying you don't want to paint them well, but you want them to just look good on the table when you're playing them and pulling them off as they get shot.
Mm-hmm.
Not, oh, look at this, like a beautiful piece that I made.
Yeah, rather than like a centerpiece model.
Like, there's a time and a place to do centerpiece Gretchen. It's not when you need 40 of them.
Yeah, which I think gets into like, where does this urge come from? And I think that's where we could spend a minute talking about it, because I think it comes from many places.
Yes.
For me, I feel that it's one of those things that can be driven by a variety of factors. Because, like, let's be honest, each hobbyist's life is like a little different.
Yeah.
But for me, I feel it largely in the fact that, one, I'm painting an army, which means I have to paint many models, and two, I have a limited amount of time to do it. So I'm looking at sort of how much hobby time I have total, how many models I have to paint, and then looking at when I have to play, when like my games are coming up. And you gotta have a balance in there somewhere. And I think that pressure is what makes you want to slim down some of these time-consuming steps. Do you feel other variables when, like, for you? Like, I know you said it pops up for you, but like,
so
where does it come from for you? Because for me, it feels almost like mathematical.
For when to cut, when do I want to cut corners, or the
like what
desire to like do the thing?
Yeah, what makes you want to cut corners?
What makes me want to cut corners is just looking at my own motivation. Like,
for you, it's more of like an interest thing.
Yeah, like if I know that I can keep my interest and my focus on this thing for 4 hours, right? That's what I've like, okay, I'm going to focus really hard for 4 hours to get this done. And I sit there to do it, and I realize that I'm only going to get like 10 models done in that time frame. I'm going to go, okay, I need to change my process because I can't do this every day to get like 60 Skaven done, right? So like when I did Skaven, as an example, like I painted like 120 clan rats in like 3 weeks. Not just only doing that, but yeah, just doing a lot of it. And like the first clan rat, I was like, I'm gonna do a test model, and it took me forever. And I went, you know what? No, can't. Instead, I just took a brown, painted all the fur, that brown. I took that same brown, used it on the wood. And then I used a metal color for the metal parts. And then I took a dry brush and I dry brushed over the fur, but not the wood. And then I washed all of it. And then I did a couple of highlights on the end of it. Just on like the tips of the like metal. And that was it. It took a quarter of the time, and I was able to do that process like in huge batches and not feel weird about it. And just went through, like chugged through. Whereas I don't think I would have gotten the 120 Skaven clan rats painted
otherwise,
if I wouldn't have cut the corners. So for me, sometimes it's I don't know if I can get this done if I don't cut corners. Same thing with like painting tons of infantry for like guard. Sometimes even tanks, like for some of these tanks are just like so much detail, rivets, plates, yada, yada, yada. And for me, I have found ways to find like cutting corners to be part of the narrative of the model. So like, I painted a tank this week that like has a ton of rivets on it. And I was like, oh, well, like instead of painting all those like individually silver and then washing and highlighting, yada, yada, yada. I just painted the whole thing its base color. I tapped a bunch of like metal colors on other bits to show variation in color. Like maybe some metal plates have been replaced but haven't been like painted over with the paint color for the army. And then when I went to go wash all of it, I did a pin wash instead and heavy pin wash the corners and stuff. Then took that pin wash and hit the rivets so that it would go down and look like a weathering effect without having to break out the enamel. And that made it look like it had been painted and then had stuff go down it.
Yeah.
And it was much easier. So like it was also a stylistic choice sometimes. Not strictly I need to save time.
But you can sometimes turn a frown upside down and do both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for something I just want to look good enough, not like gorgeous.
Yeah, and I think for me, that is part of that is like, for a hero, I'm willing to spend a lot more time because it's a hero. Like, they're important. They're like a centerpiece unit. You know, like my orc bosses, I only have a couple. Each one I'm going to have a name for and like a little story for. So I want them to look pretty great. I want to take my time on them. I'm only going to have one of each. I'm going to have so many goblins, though. And that changes the math. And I think, while also this can come from a variety of factors, the important thing to remember is that this can also manifest in a variety of strengths, depending on person and hobby progress. And I think, like, essentially what I'm trying to get to here is that this is a highly variable topic. So it is hard for us to, like, succinctly talk about it in a way that is definitively in any sort of, like, truth. So I'm trying to cover my bases to let your brain not try to conform to the words that we're saying here. Like,
yeah, there's no one answer to this problem. There's many, many solutions.
However you feel about this is how you feel about it, and it's fine. We're just trying to give how our experiences so you have sort of an idea of a touchstone in other people, and then a little explanation of how we feel so that when we talk about this final bit here, which is probably going to take a minute, you understand the variables through which we are using to discuss it. And that is whether or not you should or shouldn't cut corners. And boy, howdy, is this difficult.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to even jump at that immediately and make an answer without recognizing where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah.
And for each person, it's very different. But like for me, a lot of what originally made me not want to cut corners at all and make that question like an immediate answer of no, why wouldn't I just paint everything on the model, is because like a mixture of the box art has everything painted, right? It's all pristine, gorgeous. They spent forever painting it because it's a product.
And in the heavy metal style.
Yeah, which is even more time consuming. And then I watch a lot of YouTube about painting miniatures, and most of the time in there, those guys are spending time painting it to a very high level. Like most of them, they don't cut corners. They don't want to. Like they also have the time to do it. It's their job on top of like recording and editing and stuff. But like they again are selling a different product, but a product nonetheless. And then social media in general, right? Like Instagram feed. Tons and tons of models on it. Yeah. Twitter, tons and tons of models on it. And though like that seems to have a lot more variation in like stylistic choices, like there's some gorgeous miniatures out there that aren't heavy metal style, that are much quicker, but they still require a lot of effort, right? And you see that all the time, and then you go down to paint, you're like, well, I can't cut corners, no one else did.
But the
Am I valid
environment
as a painter?
Is different. Like, and the purpose is different.
Yes. I think that there's a lot more that doesn't get posted or doesn't get shown that is more indicative of who, like, the average person painting a model is. It's kind of like what I wanted to share here, right? It's like, for me, the answer to that question is really, really changing depending on what I'm sitting down with. I never pick one only nowadays. Like, I am just not gonna paint a Skaven clan rat the same way I paint, like, Karn the Betrayer. Like, I'm not going to paint these Corvus Cabal like I paint Guard. Vehicles are going to be different. Leaders are going to be different. Every model I sit down and paint is just different. I ask the question every time I sit down and paint. What corners will I cut? Which ones will I not cut? Not will I cut corners.
Yeah. I think for me it comes from, like, some of that is certainly true. Like looking at beautiful artwork from, like, Sam Lin's, for example. Like, incredible artist. Yeah. Like, their pieces are gorgeous. Just absolutely stunning. And when you see those, you want to kind of push a little harder because they're, you know, it's incredible. It's incredible. It can't help but want to push you a little more. But I think for me, a lot of my stuff just comes from like personal things. Like in my personal life, I have similar urges of like, you have to do things whole ass all the way every time. And like, sometimes that's probably true. But
I would say a lot of the time is probably true.
like
Like
I
a
think
lot of
that's
the time, you want to just go whole ass, but
I think that's good for like your job or maybe like a relationship of some kind. But maybe for a fun time hobby where it's not like, a devoted thing, that mindset isn't super helpful for me. But I think it does translate into my hobby, whether I want it to or not, sadly. Um, and I think it can be a problem. Like the idea that you're supposed to whole ass every mini you paint to the top tier of your ability sounds exhausting. One, like just absolutely exhausting. And two, time consuming. You're never going to get your army done in the timely manner that the average person has to hobby. I mean, especially the people watching this shit, let's be honest. Like, y'all are working a job like we are and hobbying on the side. A lot of you probably got kids and like families and responsibilities. I mean, hell, maybe multiple jobs. Like, you got life going on. You can't hobby for 8 to 10 hours a day.
yeah.
And that changes some of the math. So, like, I don't know. I think all of that to say that when I ask myself whether or not you should cut corners, I would look in the mirror, and what I would advise is for you to like deeply and truly look at what is causing you to have these feelings in their entirety. At least try to. It might be harder than I am making it sound, but I think it's worth trying. And ask yourself, are you fine with a model just looking good? Will you still be happy with good? Or even really good? Or must it be top tier peak excellence for every model? And for me, that answer is no. Hell no. Absolutely not. Like, you keep your top tier peak excellence for every single Gretchen. Like, I don't need that. That I don't think most people do.
For me, I put a higher value on completing the task
Yes.
than the end result looking perfect, right? Like, I've been playing this game for a long time. My list of fully painted armies are not very long because it is a lot. Like, painting an entire army of miniatures for this game is a long task. Regardless of how much free time you have, even if it is your job, it will take a long time. There's a reason why there are people whose job it is to paint entire miniatures for them to take pictures of for Warhammer. It takes a lot of time. And anything that helps push you towards that goal of completing the army or the unit or whatever it is that you're trying to do, it's worth assessing how much you're willing to cut. Now, how much you're willing to cut and what your shortcuts look like is very much on like an individual basis.
Yes.
I do not take the same shortcuts with guardsmen that I take on Chaos Warriors.
Yes.
I just don't. Maybe sit and formulate it out. Like we've talked about before on the show. Sit down with the thing that you're trying to paint and write it out. Write out your steps. And make a list on paper and visualize it of like, oh man, I got like 17 different types of browns I'm going to have to use and all these different pouches and things. Maybe I can cut it down to 2. Especially if you've got a ton of models. What seems like a waste of time in the beginning will save you a ton of time at the end.
Yes. And also, like, I don't know, I would look at what you're trying to get at rather than your urge. Like, your urge might be, you have to paint every Gigaw.
I love Gigaws, but like, no, thank you.
That's what your brain is telling you. Is that what it's actually trying to say, though? Because for me, when my brain says, you must paint every belt buckle or Gigaw, like when I deconstruct it and I really start, like, I pop the hood and I see what's under there, what my brain is saying is, I want you to try and put effort into this hobby that you enjoy so you can feel proud on the back end. That's really what it's saying. Like, it's throwing the wrong code when you hook up the OBD2 meter, but like that's what's happening underneath the hood.
It's constantly using car references.
Tell me they don't work though, John.
They work. I'm not saying they don't. It's just, it's the AdMech episode all over again.
For our viewers, it's a touchstone. But like that's really what it means. And in that case, cool. That I can work with. So for me, the way that shakes out is, all right, so for goblins, I'm not going to paint every belt buckle and like little MacGuffin. Just not. I'm going to paint the belts brown, and it is what it is. But I'll do a fast with some, like once you're sort of practiced and used to it, I'll do a fast 4-color workup on the skin. So the skin pops, and there's a lot of shadows, and it looks really dramatic on the table. And then I'll use a cool wash, so it's got like a dusty, grimy effect, which makes them look more in the scene. So now, through this like airbrush blending that I've been working on for a few years, and some like dramatic application of shadows, the model looks really nice on the table, and I've done some extra effort, but that effort was in a place that was more effective and was more fun. So, like, I got to cut some corners, but I also got to do something a little cool and interesting in a way that I like minis to look. Because turns out I just like dramatic minis from, like, Zenithal highlights. I find, rather than, like, the heavy metal where everything is the same color regardless of where it's at. And it's a way that I could kind of take advantage of that. And I think a lot of people can find an interesting compromise depending on where your brain's urges are actually coming from.
Yeah. I think that's also a point, is like, what is your style, right? Like the box art is heavy metal style of like highlights and just very meticulous. Like Joe said, he's very dramatic. Like you like the dramatic Zenithal style. For me, I find that my style is most of the time like, it looks like The Crow. Like it's like a 90s dark movie. Like
I've read the Judge Dredd comics. Okay.
Yeah, it's just grimy. It's dim. It's I very rarely paint bright, vibrant, explosive colors. I paint dim, dark, gray, cool colors. Just what I do. For me, that makes cutting corners way easier because I can just like kind of dim everything down. Use shadows, heavy shadows. And like it sounds like you on the other side is just like pulling all the attention to the high points on the model. Maybe your style, whoever's listening, is something in between. Maybe it's just like ours. But I'm sure there's a way for you to lean into your style of art that isn't requiring you to paint every belt buckle on those goblins.
Yeah. The thing I would advise the most, and this is the takeaway that like I want to really like hammer hard at the end, is when you are asking yourself these questions, really try to see what's causing these urges, and do they pop up in other pieces of your life? If they do, might be a bigger thing you got to unpack that I'm not qualified to do on a
We're paid qualified to talk about painting miniatures.
I do my best. I hope I can, but it might be a thing to unpack. But look, in terms of the hobby, just treat yourself with some grace. Like you're a weird human. It's got a lot going on, and it's just little toys. Like, cut yourself a break. Be nice to yourself. Ask yourself some honest questions, and see if you can't get to a place that feels good without blowing your eyeballs out trying to squint and paint every bit of trim on the inside groin of a Zinch Space Marine. Like, there is a happy medium somewhere, probably. Specifically for you. And if you're happy with cutting corners, hell with it. Cut corners. It's your hobby. You don't have to share it with anybody.
No corners. All around. Everything's a circle. Fuck it.
Like, your hobby is yours alone. You don't owe anyone anything. As long as it feels good for you, then it's fine. It truly is.
Blue Eyes, White Dragon, can't lose. It's great.
I think it's got to be fine. And if you're out there in viewership land and you try to unpack this and you're like really struggling, because this might be hard depending on your sort of like personality type and where it's coming from and how hung up it is and blah, blah, blah. It might be rough. And if it is rough, please feel free to reach out. We have been there and we are happy to try to help you get out of it, because it sucks. And we wouldn't have got out of it if we didn't have some help from the outside. So please, truly, like the Instagram, the Twitter, like it's open. Use it if you want to. YouTube comments down below. And also, just like quickly, speaking on Instagram, there was a super nice viewer who reached out to us, Rich, who just so goddamn cool. Like we get these viewer messages and we really enjoy them, but like, Rich sent us a message saying how much he liked the show and how much it helped him, and what's going on over there in Britain. And also, like, I'm shocked we have British viewers. Like, what? Why do the Brits want to listen to our like white trash American asses? Like, I don't understand. I'm real appreciative. I'm just shocked.
I'm very confused. We have biscuits and gravy, and they're different from your biscuits. Like.
Well, I'm glad you found us. I don't know how the hell you found us, but I'm glad you did. But like, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. Like that found me at just the right time. And sometimes stuff just makes you feel a whole lot. And thank you to Rich. Truly, like that was really helpful for my week, and we're glad we could help you.
Yeah, we've had more than a few listeners reach out and talk to us, and it's always good. Even if what they have to say is criticism, it's still great because like it means we're engaging with people, like real people.
And to be honest, the vast majority of people on the internet here have just been so damn nice.
Yeah, like, and even the ones that haven't been nice, they're not like from like a hateful stance. They're just like, hey, we really like this, but like you could make this a little bit better. We're like, oh, cool, thanks. We don't hate criticism here.
Yeah, it's just. I don't know. It makes me, every time I'm like, I don't know. Are people out there really listening? Like, those messages.
Or is it all Russian bots?
I mean, some of it.
Some of them are just Russian bots.
It's heartening. So, thanks to Rich. And if y'all are out there and you're going through it and you want some help getting through this topic, please reach out. We are happy to help. We are working on some other stuff back here behind the scenes. Some more lore videos that we are hammering away at, and I'm real excited for it. And I'm
even more
orcs.
Even more orcs, but also more car
metaphors. More car metaphors. Always more car metaphors. Some could say we're going to put it in drive and cruise to a new hobby location.
How dare you?
I put my hazards on. It's fine. I gave you a warning. It's not my fault you didn't heed it.
Really, we just need to release a video of what is the Tesla faction for 40K.
Overwrought and underperforming. Eldar? Currently? No. Votan? Admech? I don't know. I'm going to consider
We'll figure it out.
That's been all of our opinions. Bonafide. And Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all in the next one.